sure everybody's in place. Good afternoon and welcome. Can you guys hear me? Great. Today is a great day for Peoria Police Department and the City of Peoria as we prepare to see our Honorable Governor sign into legislation House Bill 4736. I want to start by acknowledging the following who are present with us today. Our Honorable Governor, the Honorable Lieutenant Governor, Madam Mayor Rita Ali, our state legislators, Leader Gordon Booth, Leader Kaler, Representative Lilly, and Representative Scheer. I believe there were some council members in the building, if they're here, and Dr. Nyack. And I see our city manager as well. And if I missed anybody else, I apologize, but thank you for being here. On July 31st of 2021, I was sworn in as the Chief of Police for the City of Peoria. Looking at the data in Peoria, I knew we needed to evaluate how we were going to respond to those in the community experiencing emotional distress and or experiencing a mental or behavioral health crisis. To put this in context, in 2021, we responded to 1,247 calls for service that indicated a possible suicidal person or a person that committed suicide. 978 calls for service that involved a trouble with a person with a history of mental health, and 468 calls for service that involved someone with some sort of cognitive impairment. In December, I presented the idea to Representative Gordon Booth that Peoria needed to create a co-response model. This would allow the Peoria Police Department to partner with Unity Point to have social workers within our juvenile and adult investigations units, to be able to provide more direct service to the victims of crimes and create a team that would be responsible for working towards providing trauma-informed crisis intervention, case management, advocacy, and ongoing emotional support to those we encounter, while also creating a team that would focus on the resolution of violent emotional distress persons that would be more appropriate and effective, taking into consideration alternatives to arrest to ensure the best possible long-term outcomes. We are now stepping into a new era of policing in the city of Peoria that has not been seen before. Policing is not only about making arrests or writing somebody a citation. It is also about implementing policies and procedures that provide options to get people the help they need in a more empathetic manner. Representative Gordon Booth carefully listened and believed in the idea that as law enforcement and a community, we needed to evaluate our response not only to establish guidelines for the recognition of persons experiencing emotional distress or a mental health crisis, but also put in place a mechanism to respond more effectively, efficiently, and safer for all involved. We then began to draft what now is part of House Bill 4736. I want to thank the following who have been instrumental in the process of getting us here today and believed in our ability to serve our community together in a new and innovative way. Representative Gordon Booth, thank you for believing in the idea and helping Peoria move forward in a new progressive direction. Monica Hendrickson, the Peoria County Health Department Public Administrator, thank you for your leadership and your help in moving us forward with this. Ann Camden, Janet Hindenburg, Dean Steiner, Keith Knapp, Christina Gerlach from Unity Point, thank you for your continued support, and we'll continue working on this together. I would be remiss to not give a special thank you to Chief Anna Lally from the Elgin Police Department, who's out here with us today. The work that we did in Elgin under her leadership has helped pave the way for what will be signed into legislation today, and has begun to define what the future of law enforcement will look like. Governor, thank you for being here today. Let's step into this future together.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Well, thank you so much to Chief Echeverria, and good afternoon to everyone. There are so many people to acknowledge here, and I'm not going to do a great job of getting to everybody. You've heard many of their names, but obviously our chief in Elgin having so much to do with shaping this bill. Our leader, Jahan Gordon Booth, who's been a good friend and ally, and so many accomplishments for our police and for our first responders, as well as for our state more broadly. Representative Camille Lilly, who you'll hear from in a little while, Representative Sue Scherer, who is such a great advocate for education and keeping kids in school, making sure that they have opportunities like never before. And of course, our Senator Dave Kaler, who, once again, one of the leaders in the Senate, and you all are very well represented here with Jahan Gordon Booth and with Dave Kaler leading the way. So let me tell you how proud I am of the partnership in this work as we take a major step forward to reimagine how we effectuate public safety. The work is urgent. Cities and states across the nation of various sizes and geographies and all political stripes have been plagued by the scourge of violence. Violence that infects communities and neighborhoods and blocks and families. We in Illinois, including the coalition of leaders standing with me today, have gone at this problem with the strongest possible response. First, we're deploying an unprecedented statewide investment in community safety, $250 million to disrupt cycles of violence in our neighborhoods through community-based solutions like the Reimagined Public Safety Program. We've also enacted the most comprehensive reform to our state firearms laws in over a generation, including universal background checks to keep guns out of the hands of those who shouldn't have them. And we substantially increased mental health and substance use treatment that so often leads to interactions with law enforcement. And we coordinated 911 and 988 services to make sure that those who are experiencing behavioral health emergencies receive the community care that they need. Today, we take another major step towards forging a public safety system that is equitable and compassionate and just. Crime can create wounds that the justice system alone can never heal. Nearly a quarter of crime victims will experience PTSD throughout their lifetime. And for victims of assault and witnesses to homicides, that number skyrockets. So today, we're launching a victim-centered co-responder pilot program to pair victims and witnesses with social workers who will provide survivors with trauma-informed crisis intervention services, community resources for mental and behavioral health treatment, and empathetic advocacy. Starting right here in Peoria and in locations across the state, this initiative will bring intervention training and mental health first aid education to first responders, equipping them with the tools and skills that they need to support victims and witnesses of a crime. With a $10 million investment, the pilot program will set the stage for a reconceptualized victim support system for all Illinoisans. On top of that, we're reinvigorating the Violent Crime Witness Protection Act with a $20 million budget to guarantee witnesses have the financial support and physical security that they need to come forward safely in the wake of a crime. As we work to end violence at its root, these programs will bring more support to those living with senseless tragedies. Today, I'll also sign into law a preemptive direct payment program for families dealing with the unimaginable heartbreak of losing their child. The current system requires reimbursement, placing an undue burden on low-income families already dealing with more than anyone ever should. Next summer, the state will reverse that process and support grieving families up front. As I sign this bill, I think about Michael M.J. Moultrie. At only 4 years old, M.J. was heartbreakingly taken from us when he was struck by a stray bullet. One moment, he was getting his hair braided. The next, his mother, Angela Gregg, was planning a funeral. Without adequate funding, Angela was unable to bury her only child, instead being forced to choose cremation. She should never have had to experience such loss for change to happen. But she courageously spoke out, so no other parent would experience what she did. And in doing so, She has made Illinois a better place. None of this would have been possible without the leadership of Dr. Dave Nyack, who you'll hear from shortly, from the Strength to Love Foundation. Dr. Nyack, thank you for showing us the way. Finally, today I'll also sign the Law Enforcement Recruitment and Retention Fund into law. It's been one of my top priorities to hire, train, and retain the best first responders in every Illinois community, and that's why last summer we enhanced the mental health resources available to police officers and firefighters who face enormous challenges each day they come to work. Today's legislation will ensure that our officers are given the resources that they need to best serve our communities, ensuring that salary constraints don't hold back responsible officers from a life of service. I want to recognize the bill sponsors. I've named a few already, but I want to get the whole list in here. A few of them not here today. Senators Robert Peters, Julie Morrison, and Leader Jackie Collins, as well as, of course, Leader Jahan Gordon Booth and Representatives Dave Vella and Camille Lilly. I also want to thank Leader Dave Kaler and Mayor Rita Ali and my formidable partner in this work, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton, for their leadership in keeping our communities safe. When we invest in our neighborhoods and our people, we build a public safety system that works for all of us. Illinois will be a leading example across the nation for reform, rehabilitation, and justice. With that, I have the honor of introducing truly a visionary in that work, the leader, a friend, Jahan Gordon Booth.
Good afternoon. First and foremost, thank you so much, Governor Pritzker and Lieutenant Governor Stratton, for being here in the city of Peoria on this warm May afternoon. We thank you for your leadership over this past 2 years. We've had a very challenging 2 years, but you have led us in an incredibly strong way throughout the way, and we thank you so very much. I thank all of you for being here today. And when I look out at this group is who we do this work for. You are our why. When I was asked by the Speaker of the House this year to lead the public safety work group in finding a path to be able to build a better bridge between law enforcement and community, I took that work on knowing that it was going to be incredibly challenging. But the why behind this work is why all of us show up in all of our respective capacities, regardless of whether or not you are elected to do a particular job or not. The fact of the matter of it is that there are those that would like for us to believe that you have to choose between police or community. And I believe that that is a failed notion. Police are community. The community needs the police. And it is our jobs as leaders to identify the paths to create a better opportunity for community and police to work together better, to work together stronger. And I think that we've done a pretty good job of doing that. Working on the co-responder pilot program with Chief Echevarria that is now going to be implemented in cities across this state is one of many examples of how you can take concepts that are really born out of community, that are then accepted by law enforcement and then become common practice across this entire state. I look forward to the day where not just obviously Peoria is the lead community, but there will also be the city of Waukegan, the city of Springfield, as well as the city of East St. Louis that will be implementing a co-responder pilot, again, that was born right here in the city of Peoria. And when we think about what it means for a victim or a witness to come forward in something that most of us have never experienced before, which is a homicide, and you think about the challenge that that must be for an individual, the state is putting their money where their mouth is. The state is stepping up to say, we know that this is a challenge. We know that you need the mental health support, the behavioral health support. We want to be there and we want to walk with you every step of the way. I'm proud to live here in the state of Illinois. I'm proud to do this work. There are those who have lots of catchphrases, none that I accept, because I believe that we should be funding the community. We should be funding the police. We should be funding programs and funding Peoria. These policies that will be signed into law today, they prioritize Illinoisans. The reason that you see us here standing here today is because we are all in for a safer Illinois. I want to give a shout out to a woman who shall remain nameless, but she was a large part of the inspiration behind the work that's been done over the last 7 years, very specific to the Crime Victims Witness Program. This is a person, an individual, who put her own life and her children's lives at risk to come forward so that my family, so that my husband could have justice for our son. And so this isn't pie in the sky stuff for us, ladies and gentlemen. This stuff is real. Violence isn't just happening in Chicago, it's happening in communities all over the state. And there is a responsibility that the leadership, and when I say leadership, I'm looking at you because you are the leaders of the community. We're just elected to do a job. You are the leaders of this community. We have a responsibility to ensure that we are collectively working together to do just that. The investments that we have already discussed today will facilitate in getting that done. I could not be more proud to stand here with all of you and all of the folks behind me, again, to stand for a safer Illinois. With that said, I would love to bring to the podium my justice-loving sister, Lieutenant Governor Juliana Stratton.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Juliana Stratton, and I use she, her pronouns. And thank you so much, Leader Gordon Booth, who all of you already know is such a strong and passionate leader for community safety, not just here in the Peoria area, but all across the state of Illinois. Thank you for that warm introduction. And thank you, Governor Pritzker, for your dedicated leadership in healing our state's communities. I also want to thank my friends and former colleagues in the General Assembly who pushed forward these critical pieces of legislation so that we can continue to address the public health crisis that is violence in our state. In the interest of time, I'll echo the governor's sentiments and just say thank you to all of the distinguished leaders joining us today, both standing behind me and filling this room, for showing that we all have to be all in to find solutions. That a crisis of this magnitude deserves compassionate, effective policymaking, with the most impacted at the very center of the conversation. There is no one quick fix to preventing violence. We have to use all of the tools at our disposal, and these bills build on our administration's commitment to a comprehensive approach from all sides. Because when we talk about the pain and the trauma caused by violence, it's more than just the figures reported in the headlines. Behind each of those numbers is a person with hopes and dreams, a family mourning, and a community that needs help. As head of the Justice, Equity, and Opportunity Initiative and as a restorative justice practitioner, I often say that justice is more than police, jails, and prisons. Justice is also recognizing that safe communities are healthy communities where resources for mental health needs are embedded in the anti-violence work. Justice is seeing the layers of disruption and angst caused by violence, the ways that it can hurt a family emotionally, socially, and economically, and offering the assistance they need to move forward. And justice is being intentional about ensuring that the people protecting our communities not only have the capacity to perform their duties, but that residents from underrepresented communities can see themselves and their experiences reflected in departments across the state. From allocating funds to prioritize recruiting law enforcement from our most underserved areas, to supporting victims of violence and their families financially and emotionally, these bills take us further along the road to healing. Yet we know that there's more work to do, and we are far from done. I'm proud to chair the Restore, Reinvest, and Renew Program Board, or R3 as we call it, serving alongside incredible champions for healing our communities like Leader Jahan Gordon Booth and others. We are building an infrastructure to address disinvestment and connect our most vulnerable communities to the resources they need equitably and sustainably through grants funded by adult use cannabis tax revenues. More importantly, I'm proud that our measures, each one historic and impactful in their own right, create a statewide network of responsive, trauma-informed policy. As the governor said, we are not just reacting to violence. We know our communities deserve so much more than that. They deserve a system that is well equipped to tackle the vast, complex roots of violence, as well as the day-to-day support. They deserve urgency and forward thinking. We will continue to focus our efforts on bold measures that carve a path for long-term solutions to gun violence, and we will ensure that all who are impacted right now are seen, heard, and supported, so we can all be a part of a brighter, safer future in Illinois. Thank you, and now I will pass it along to one of the visionaries at the forefront of this mission, Representative Camille Lilly.
I guess I should have brought paper. I can't read the little phone. But I just want to say thank you, Governor Pritzker, for knowing how to bring an issue together. Violence that exists in our communities throughout Illinois has to have the leadership that brings us together for the resolve. So thank you, Governor Pritzker, for knowing the importance of doing just that. And now you're wondering probably why a young Representative Camille Lilly from the west side of Chicago is in Peoria today. It is so critical that each and every one of us is a part of the solution. And as you heard from Leader Gordon Booth, how the vision of the community and the police department can bring our solution to our community. But what is also brought is the vision of Dr. Nyack, who worked alongside Leader Senator Collins to bring the compassion that is needed in this unfortunate situation that existing in our communities and our families, and the ability to help families deal with the bearing their loved ones. And that is a monumental task just in itself, but to layer it with violence, the victimization is hard and heavy on the hearts and minds of those who have to go through that. So signing this part of this joint bill brings the compassion that comes with the resolution of violence. And I'm honored to stand here, drove all the way from Chicago, to know that Governor Pritzker, Leader Gordon Booth, Senator Collins, Dr. Nyack, new chief here in Peoria have come together for the people. I just want to say thank you, Lord, for allowing me to be here on today. We will continue this work together. And at this time, I'd like to introduce Leader Kaler for his thoughts of how collective Senate and House will continue this work. God bless you all.
Thank you, Representative Lilly, and welcome to Peoria. You can come down as often as you like. I just want to say a big thank you to Leader Jahan Gordon Booth for your vision and really for your energy in making sure that legislation like this gets done. Thank you. I feel like I'm the luckiest person in the legislature having you as a partner and representing Peoria. So, sister, thank you. With leadership like we have in Peoria, with Mayor Rita Ali, with Chief Echeverria, with we have Sheriff Brian Asbell, all the men and women of law enforcement. This is going to work. This is going to work because we're going to partner with people like Dr. Keith Knepp and Unity Point and Unity Place and bring mental health professionals together in doing this. This is working smart. This is working smart. This is what we should be doing. So, Illinois has a distinction of doing things right. And thank you, Governor. We have had 6 credit upgrades in the last couple of years. So we're credited with doing things right, but now we're also doing the right things. These 3 pieces of legislation are the right things to do. A budget is a moral document that we have with the people that we represent, with the citizens of Illinois. And in that moral document, it means that we have to do the things that really matter to our community. I mean, I know when law enforcement goes out for a domestic violence call that you just can, locking a person up doesn't really solve the problem. I bet you probably have alcohol abuse or substance abuse or mental health issues or emotional issues, and you have to address that. That's a root cause. These bills do that. And so I'm very proud to be here and to be part of this. Let me introduce Dr. David Nyack. I just met him this afternoon. I'm so impressed with him and the work that he is doing. He's got 160 acres where he's growing sweet corn to feed families of Illinois. He also was the impetus behind the bill to make sure that we could bury our children that are victims of crime. He's from Peoria. He was born in St. Francis Hospital. Let's give him a big Peoria homecoming welcome. Dr. David Nyack.
Good afternoon. My name is Dr. Dave Nyack, and I am founder of the Strength to Love Foundation. I am honored to come back on my birthday to the city where I was born. Yes. I'm a graduate of Proctor Hospital Daycare as well, so thank you. Today I stand with those behind me and with the many families of Illinois who have lost their young children to gun violence. The state of Illinois rightly classifies gun violence as a public health crisis. The loss of life and the long-term trauma that is experienced by the victims, their families, and our communities is far-reaching. Nobody plans to lose their young child. It's the worst tragedy a family could ever endure. Today, the average cost of a funeral is $10,000. These costs will rise with inflation, too. Many times, families rely on crowdsourcing and church donations to help pay for their child's funeral and their burials. The Strength to Love Foundation has assisted families who lost their children to gun violence by paying for their funeral and burial costs. The Michael Moultrie Jr. Act allows the state of Illinois to directly pay the service providers up to $10,000 for funerals and burials of children who are under the age of 17 who were murdered by gun violence. Direct payments to service providers will help alleviate the pain families are experiencing with this financial hardship. We are grateful to Governor Pritzker for signing this bill into law today. We also want to thank Senator Jackie Collins and Representative Lilly, who are our sponsors in the Illinois Congress, and to all of the legislators and groups who supported this bill. The Michael Moultrie Jr. Act will provide a light for families during the darkest times of their lives. Thank you very much. I have the distinct honor of inviting Governor Pritzker to sign these wonderful bills into law today.
to take any questions from members of the media. So there are two parts of that question. I'm going to ask Leader Gordon Booth to answer the other part. I'll just talk a little bit about the pipeline of mental health professionals, because we're doing a lot in Illinois. We recognize that there is a shortage of healthcare professionals and a shortage of behavioral health professionals. And so we're investing in scholarship programs, in encouraging people to go into the field, creating a pipeline of professional training so that we're able to bring them into those fields. Now, I would add, we're also doing things to attract people from other states. So not to leave anybody else with, without professionals in those states, but we also know that there are some great opportunities that we can offer to people from around the country from places where maybe they're not as well recognized there as they are here. And so those are things that we're trying to fill the pipeline to bring people into the various job openings that we've got. I want to ask Leader Gordon Booth to answer the other part of your question.
Hi. So last October, myself and Leader Kaler worked very closely with Dr. Knapp at Unity Point, and we worked on creating a higher Medicaid reimbursement rate for Unity Point so that they have the ability to be much more competitive as it relates to their pricing. Obviously, if you are in the healthcare profession right now, you can almost name your price and you can travel not just anywhere in the country, but anywhere in the world. And so pricing in terms of staffing has to be incredibly competitive. We were able to actually get the Medicaid reimbursement rate increased for Unity Point specifically, and frankly, that was done at the behest of Chairwoman Camille Lilly, because it was actually her bill that we were able to insert that language in, and so that will actually be very helpful in terms of having a higher Medicaid reimbursement rate for overall staffing decisions. Specific to the question about recruitment and retention, can you re-ask that question?
When it comes to just, I don't know if it's in the bill, so I haven't looked through it all, but just when it comes to staffing jails, staffing the police departments, there's a lot of turnover. How are you keeping people in these roles so they are trained and then
So what we're seeing, not just in hospitals and jails and schools, at restaurants, is staffing is a problem nationwide. And so every industry is having to retrain and retool and rethink how they're not just recruiting staff, but also retaining the staff that they have. And so a part of the recruitment and retention package that the governor just signed into law right here in Peoria, all of this work was done in collaboration with law enforcement. So over the past 6 months, working with our local law enforcement here, but law enforcement all over the state in terms of talking about the exodus that we're seeing in terms of a lot of folks who frankly came into the role after 1994. They have their time, and so now many of those folks are retiring. And so some of the elements of the bill, so for example, the age by which individuals have the ability to retire in order to make the job more attractive, we have dropped that age by 55. We are working on a community college pilot program. One of the challenges that we are experiencing here in the state is that folks are not able to go to the academy until they're 21 because of working with guns. We're looking to expand the capacity by being able to bring younger people into community colleges. We have one of the issues that we have discussed this past year that we're looking to bring into fruition next year is having a much more robust Explorer program. We have one here, but frankly, a lot of cities across this state don't have that Explorers program. We're seeing younger people, this generation, what is it, Gen Z? This generation, a lot of them, they want to be content creators, right? They want to do things on social media. We don't see as many of them going into professions like teaching and law enforcement and firefighters like they did maybe 25 years ago. So many of the elements of the way in which we will continue to recruit and retain law enforcement were worked on in collaboration with law enforcement. So part of what we did specific to the Safety Act was we worked with law enforcement to identify what are some of the challenged areas, and as it relates to start dates, as you know, the Safety Act has not been implemented yet. And so we have worked very closely to identify some of those areas where there were challenges. We moved some dates out in order to be able to work more effectively with law enforcement specific to the issue of healthcare staffing and housing. That's probably a question that would be better answered by a healthcare professional, but we're doing our work in terms of hearing from what the needs are within the respective industry and trying to respond to those as quickly as we can.
And I'll just add one thing, partly to each of your questions. I think you've seen that we've done a lot in the education profession to try to bring more teachers in. We've had a teacher shortage. We've created the opportunity for people to make it easier for them to become teachers, to get certified. We've cut fees and so on so that people feel like they can come back into the industry if they've retired and so on. The same thing is true in the law enforcement profession. We've done a lot of things to try to bring more people in or make it easier for people to join. I'll just give you one example in an area where I really have direct control, and that's the Illinois State Police. We have the same thing what Leader Gordon Booth was saying. We had a lot of people join the force in the mid-'90s and leading into the late 90s. And guess what? It's time for them to retire right about now. And that's why you're seeing many people retire. It's just time. And so what we wanted to do was make sure we've got enough people coming into state police by giving people an opportunity who may not have had a 4-year bachelor degree. That was a requirement before to get into the Illinois State Police. Now you can come in, if you're already a police officer in a community across the state, you can come into the Illinois State Police. Or there are other ways that you can skip over the requirement of a bachelor's degree in order to become a state police officer, a trooper. So these are all things we've turned the dials in each of the areas in education, and each of the areas we're trying to do this in law enforcement as well. And it's because, again, there is a staffing shortage everywhere. Don't let people tell you that there aren't jobs everywhere. If people want to get a job, and good paying jobs, we have lots of them across the state of Illinois, and these are just some of them.
Governor?
Yes.
Yesterday in Aurora, you were at a press conference unlike any I've ever seen with your challenger, Mr. Urban. I have 2 questions. First, I don't know if you had a chance to see it. You may have heard some of the comments. What did you think about that? And he claimed you were criminally negligent in your handling of the veterans' home. Did you respond?
Well, let me give you a direct answer, which you may not have gotten yesterday at a press conference. First of all, you ought to be able to answer questions. It's my job. I think that we counted up that for every day that I've been in office, every weekday I have, on average, had a press availability and taken questions and answered questions. And you know that for the first year of COVID, I think I was at the podium nearly every single day, including weekends. But it's very important that you answer questions, especially if you're going to put yourself forward to the public and ask them to trust you and to believe in you. They've got to know where you stand on the issues. As to the second part, I think it's incredibly hypocritical for people who say they don't think we should have ever had any mandates at all related to mitigations of COVID-19. We were trying to keep people healthy and safe in the worst moments of this worldwide pandemic, deadly pandemic. And it was necessary for us to ask people to do the right thing. The people at that press conference, all of them fought the mitigations, including the gentleman you're talking about. Well, let's start with, if you want to reduce crime, you've got to solve crimes. And that's why we've put so much money, for example, into world-class crime labs in the state of Illinois so that we can analyze the evidence and hold the people who truly are responsible and put them in prison. So that's number one. You've got to give police the tools that they need to go arrest the right people and make sure that we can put them in prison. Second, it's extraordinarily important that we provide police with the technology that they need in order to do the job. That's another thing that's built into the public safety efforts that we've made over the last year and a half to provide police with, for example, we have highway shootings going on in and around Chicago. We now have the ability, as a result of license plate reading cameras, to track people who are firing those shots. It's very important that we go after them. And since we've put those cameras in, we've been able to arrest quite a number of the perpetrators. So there's a lot that we must do in order to hold people accountable. And we are putting the investments in that are necessary.
Thank you so much.
Sure, one more.
Thank you. So just obviously it's really hot out here today. And just with some questions what you would do with the power grid and just the state's ability to meet energy demand this summer.
Yeah.
Some concerns about possibly brownouts. And then I guess some people are saying that perhaps some of the green energy isn't catching up fast enough, and is pulling out of fossil fuels premature.
Well, let's start with, we saved quite a lot of energy that was going to be shut down, the production of energy that would have been shut down by virtue of passing the energy bill that we passed last fall. Second, the provisions that would reduce the amount of coal-provided energy, those provisions haven't even gone into effect. I mean, it hasn't affected any of the coal-fired plants yet. It's a process that goes all the way until 2038 and beyond. So nobody should think that what we passed in CEJA is reducing the amount of energy that we're able to provide across the state of Illinois. Now, there are things that happen outside of Illinois that affect pricing in Illinois. In central and southern Illinois, there are power lines that go into other states, and we're already acquiring energy and have been for years from those other states. So we want to make it as easy for people as possible, lower their electric bills, and indeed, for much of the state, we've been able to do that already. We're looking at other ways to do that for people that you're talking about who might be affected this summer. But I would not expect brownouts. I know that's been said by one columnist, but I would not expect that. What we are doing is incentivizing the creation of more energy production in our state. That's what's really happening. Thank you very much.